Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmidty, Swanee and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right.
Yeah, that's right. Great, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. Thanks. Yeah, good. Yeah. I'm fine. So we are doing a back-to-back because the boys are in Santiago. So we're utilising their somewhat limited internet as much as we possibly can, and they're very tight for time. So we'll maybe just get straight into I'm Schmidty.
I'm Swanee.
And I'm Clarkey. And together we are Trial by Wine.
Beautiful. And what are we drinking?
Not wine?
I've shaped it up a little bit. And now I'm having
Swanee's having a
water.
sparkling water. Yeah.
Yep.
Woo, I'm still
crazy.
drinking the Delatite Sauvignon Blanc, and fortunately I only had 2 small glasses in the last episode because I wasn't meant to be doing this one, but I'm still quite neat, which is just as well. Otherwise I'd have to email my notes to people and they'd have to do it for me. And Clarkey, you on the Nescafe
we've
still?
progressed from the... No, we've progressed from the Nescafe because now the hotel breakfast has opened. So they've got a little... automatic coffee maker. So Stu's gone and got us some beautiful lattes. Very nice.
A little step
You're
up
quite
from where
fancy
you were
now.
at 6 a.m. this morning.
I thought you were going to say wine. I was like,
Yes.
well, breakfast is open. And it's like, wow, that's impressive. I didn't know, like, Chilean breakfast had wine, but I was...
Wine. Oh, that would be good. It would certainly set a tone for the
All
day
right.
if we had wine at this hour.
Oh, you'll be asleep again in 2 hours if you have wine now. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to crack on with the story.
Great. Let's do it.
Okay, so today I'm going to tell the story of the Happy Face Killer, not to be confused with the Green River Killer or the Smiley Face Killer or even the Smiley Faced Murder Theory. Who knew there were so many other horrific murderers that we could confuse this guy with? But there you go. Every time I research a story, I become more aware of how truly terrifying this world actually is.
So, sorry, he's the happy face?
He's the Happy Face Killer, yep.
The happy face
Right,
killer.
okay.
Yeah.
I think I
Good
did see one the other day called the smiley face killer. I think you're right.
Yeah, there's a Smiley Face Killer. There's actually multiple Smiley Face Killers. There's a slasher film loosely based on the idea of the Smiley Face Killer. There is a man who I came across in my research, also a Smiley Face Killer, but we're not talking about him today. We're talking about the Happy Face Killer.
I'm wondering about when the police interview the victims or, potential witnesses, and they say, oh, yeah, he just looked like he was pretty happy. Was he happy or was he smiling? Because we need to work out which one it is. And can you just be a little bit more specific with your description?
Well, after our last episode, all I can picture now is Ronald McDonald's clown.
Is he happy or
And
smiling?
I'm just like,
Or
honestly,
both?
he's smiling all the time, but he looks pretty happy, so I reckon he's the Happy Face Killer. I mean, sorry, clown. Whoops.
Oh.
That was a Freudian slip. All right, so my sources are ranker.com, Murderpedia, Wikipedia, law.umich, which I think is Uni of Michigan, .edu, frankweberauthor.com, crimelibrary.org, allthat'sinteresting.com, beyondthecrime.com, the Oregonian and the Columbian newspapers, and oxygen.com. Right.
Solid list.
I have to remember how to say this girl's name because the spelling is quite confusing. I think it's Tonya Bennett, was an outgoing and friendly young woman who had grown up in Portland, Oregon. She was a delightful 23-year-old who made friends with strangers easily. One night in January 1990, Tonya went out to a local bar to have some drinks and laughs with friends.
Schmidty, I'm really struggling to get past a point. Can you just tell me, because Tonya to me is a very straightforward spelling, either with an I or a Y. How is it spelled?
Taunja.
What?
Taunja. I told her. It was like...
Pretty spelling.
And, well, Tonya is our victim, so let's not laugh too much at her name.
I don't know if I spelt that correctly. Could you
Okay.
repeat?
Taunja. And I'll tell you that the Happy Face Killer
Tonya.
was was the individual who helped me to understand how to pronounce it, simply because he said her name wrong twice. But I thought, okay, phonetically, it's Tonya. Got it. So,
okay, right. I
back
can
to
move on
Tonya.
now.
Tonya didn't come home that night, and her family reported her missing on the 21st of January. The next day, the body of a young woman was found, having been dumped down an embankment off Old Columbia River Highway east of Portland, Oregon. At first considered a Jane Doe because she had no identification on her, as she was later identified as Tonya, she'd been beaten, raped, and strangled to death with a length of white cord. Oddly, the zip from her jeans had been cut out, and the police assumed this had been taken as a trophy. Now, I would have thought that someone might have noticed the man Tonya left with, but unfortunately for the investigators, no one seemed to have seen anything. As a result of the lack of leads, the investigators launched a public appeal for information where they discussed certain aspects of the case. They quickly received an anonymous call from a woman who told authorities she had overheard a person named, here's another hard name, John Sosvovsky, who I realise I don't know, hang on, give me a second to check his name, because I've spelled it 6 different ways.
I was just laughing because you said, here's another hard name. It's John. And I was like, it's not that hard. How's that spelled?
No, it's Sosnovsky. So I overheard a person named John Sosnovsky bragging at a bar about killing Tonya. When no one appeared to arrest Sosnovsky, the anonymous tipster called the investigating detectives directly and told them that she knew who had killed Tonya. Laverne Pavlinac was a 57-year-old woman who was in an abusive relationship with Sosnovsky.
These names.
Did we touch on which country this is in?
It's
Portland,
in Portland, Oregon.
US.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I
so
missed that.
Laverne was this 57-year-old woman. She was in an abusive relationship with John Sosnovsky, and she was convinced he was a killer, and at the time, John was 39 years old. Detective John Ingram went to Laverne's home to interview her. She told him that Sosnovsky was on parole at the time of Tonya's murder, and she described him as a violent alcoholic. Detective Ingram asked if he could search the house, and she said, sure thing. He found a letter addressed to Sosnovsky, which had a handwritten note on the back which read, T. Bennett, good peace. As the detectives were leaving the house, Sosnovsky showed up. He agreed to be interviewed and said he didn't know Tonya and had no idea about the letter that they had found. It wasn't the smoking gun that they may have hoped for, so they let him go, but he was on their radar now.
Someone writing T. Bennett, good peace on the back of an envelope is a crime, surely. Ugh, what a shit phrase.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it doesn't immediately, but it also doesn't immediately suggest, like anyone could have written that.
Oh, 100%. No, I'm with you on that. It's just that in itself is a crime. Don't talk about people as good peace.
So still thinking he must have had something to do with it, they interviewed him again, and this time he said he did know Tonya and she'd been murdered by a man named Chuck, a mate of his. He said Chuck had given him a lift on the night of the 21st with Tonya's body in the back seat, but Detective Ingram didn't believe him, and even if he had, they didn't have actually any evidence to arrest him. Laverne seemed to know intimate details about the case. She claimed to have found a strange purse in the trunk of her car with a piece of denim from a pair of jeans inside. But of course, these were not a match for the missing items belonging to Tonya. The detectives put it to Laverne that she was making shit up, so she went all in.
I put it to you, Laverne.
You are making shit up, that's right. And she went all in and implicated herself in the murder. She told the investigators that she knew Sosnovsky did it because she saw Tonya's body. He went off this is her quoting, he went off into the woods with her. He said, I better not open my mouth, that this never happened, or I will cause trouble for your family. I'll hurt your family. So, whilst Detective Ingram did think that Laverne might be a truth stretcher, she then claimed to know where she and Sosnovsky had left Tonya's body in the Columbia Gorge outside of town, and took investigators to the exact remote wooded area where Tonya was found. Sosnovsky was brought in for questioning and denied any involvement. Investigators installed a hidden recording device in their home, hoping to catch Sosnovsky making incriminating statements. While the police didn't get any hard evidence, nay, any evidence at all, the recordings demonstrate how good old Laverne attempted to convince her boyfriend that he had played a role in Bennett's death. I don't remember to go to no gorge, dump no body for God's sake, I don't, Sosnowski is heard saying on the tape. I don't know if he has that accent. It's just the accent.
With that
it sounded like.
It
feels like
seems
a bit of a stretch.
The way, yeah.
That's your down home Oregon accent.
No, it's the no gorge and the no body is what made me want to say it like that. John, that's the worst thing you've gotten yourself into. Sorry, that's the worst thing you've ever gotten yourself into, she told him. Based on Laverne's statements and that Sosnowski failed a polygraph test, authorities arrested him on murder charges. But a few days later, they got another call from Laverne. She changed her story again. This time
Hi,
to say
me again.
hi.
I just remembered something.
Am I on?
Hide.
Can you just tell me what I told you last time?
Yeah, this time I think I was there. I think I might have had something to do with this girl dying. So this time she says she too was involved in Tonya's death. She told the investigators she'd gone to the bar to meet Sosnowski, but Tonya was alive when she picked them up and both got in the car with her. She slapped him, he slapped her, punched her, slapped her, and they were laughing. Then it became serious, a serious argument. She told investigators she drove them to a scenic overlook at the Columbia Gorge where Sosnowski told her to pull over. She then described how she watched Sosnowski have sex with Tonya while he directed her to hold a rope around her neck, and that she believed she pulled the rope too tight, killing Tonya.
Oh, whoops.
I feel like it's my fault, she said.
Doesn't sound credible.
Whoops. Well,
No, Laverne, go and think about it for 2 days and call us back.
yeah, give us another version
Who
of
does she
events.
think she's protecting, John?
Oh, no, she's not protecting John. After she confessed to investigators, they called her daughter and said, could you come to your mother's house right now because we're not really sure about this. And
Laverne's daughter?
the daughter.
She cray.
Yeah, and Laverne's daughter arrives and Laverne confesses to her too. They have her tell, this is the daughter saying this, they have her tell me the story and I looked at her again and I said, Mum, are you sure? And she said, well, they told me I had to tell you this because if I told you, then they'd believe me. This is the policeman. Now I'm thinking she's confessed. She's pointed out the dump site. She's confessed to us on tape. She's told her own daughter the same story very convincingly. I'm thinking, my God, she is actually involved in this. This is Detective Ingram. I'm told to place her in a holding cell. And I say, okay, Laverne, now you need to go into that room right there. She turned around and she looked at me and she gave me a hug. I thought, oh, my God, I feel like I just put my mother in jail.
Cray, lady.
So, based on the evidence, of which there was none, Laverne and Sosnowski were arrested for murder, to which they both said they were innocent.
Oh,
Laverne's saying she's innocent.
Once she's been arrested for it, yes.
yes.
In January 1991, Laverne Pavlinac was convicted of felony murder and sentenced to life with a minimum of 10 years. Sosnowski, who frankly there was no evidence other than Laverne's testimony implicating him, was terrified of the death penalty, so he pleaded no contest to murder and kidnapping and was also sentenced to life in prison. The end.
No.
Not the end.
What?
Yeah, as
That's
if.
not the end.
Yeah. Of course it's not. So, fast forward a little bit. Sometime in 1994, someone vandalised the wall of a toilet in a truck stop, claiming responsibility for the murder of Tanya. Yes, he misspelled and mispronounced her name, and signing off with a happy smiley face. You know, a smiley face thing. When no one paid any attention to that, surprise, surprise.
No, but was it a happy
Letters
face
started-
or a smiley face? It's important.
It was
Like an emoji.
It'll lead to the wrong killer.
No.
It's a circle with a pair of circles for eyes and a smile. You know, just a line
I
drawing.
just want to know whether it was a happy
Of a
face or a
smiley
smiley
face.
face so I can connect it to the right killer. That's all.
They called it the happy face. So we'll go with happy face, all right?
Okay, let's go with happy.
I don't know why. No one paid any attention to some, weird writing on a toilet wall from miles away from where this actually happened. So
That's not
I know,
credible.
shocking. So then letters started to be sent to the police and to the press.
Sorry, this is why where the other pair.
They're in jail.
I'm a
They're
bit
done.
confused.
Yep.
They are right.
No,
Yeah,
they are in jail. They've said originally she said they did it, then they both said no, we're innocent, and now they're both doing life.
And so they were convicted beyond reasonable doubt based on all of that. That's brilliant.
Correct. Phil Stanford, a journalist at the Oregonian paper, received an anonymous letter signed off by the happy face. Now, it's a 6-page letter, but I could only get the 5th page of it. It seems to be the only one available. And it reads as follows. I would like to tell my story. I'm a good person at times, ? I always wanted to be liked. I have been married and divorced with children. I didn't really want to be married, but it happened. I've read your paper and enjoyed it a lot. I always have wanted to be noticed, like Paul Harvey, front page, etc. So I started something I don't know how to stop. On or around January the 20th, 1990, I picked up Sonia Bennett and took her home.
Jesus.
I raped her and beat her real bad. Her face was all broke up. Then I ended her life, and that's underlined, by pushing my fist into her throat.
Very early. Oh, don't! It's very early in the morning for this level of gore, Schmidty.
Well, I actually have done a good job of removing most of the gore from this story. This turned me on. I got a high. Then panic set in where to put the body. And then he goes on and carries on, right? Now, Stanford never had actually thought that Laverne and Savnovsky had killed Tonya. And when he received the letter, he didn't immediately think that the author was the killer, but he certainly was prepared to do some further digging himself. And he was a columnist, and he wrote about the letters and the case in his column, pointing out there was no actual forensic evidence to link the two confessors to the crime. He even went so far as to interview Laverne in jail, where she told him that she'd made the whole thing up as a way to get rid of her nasty boyfriend, and that it just sort of snowballed into her confessing to being part of the murder.
She's ridiculous.
It happens.
I was going to say, as it does, right? You know, this is the thing. You know, once you start lying, it just one thing comes.
The Laverne who cried murder.
Of course, Detective Ingram was sure at this point that he had the right person, and he wasn't listening. And in Ingram's defence, he later said that she was such a grandmother type and so earnest in her confession, coupled with the fact that she had identified where the body had been found, that he was determined to believe her. He even said he didn't put restraints on her when he arrested her. She was so much of a grandmother figure for him. So who did kill Tonya?
The happy face killer.
As it turns out, a long-haul trucker named Keith Jesperson had been at the bar the night Tonya had gone missing in 1990. Let me tell you a little bit about Keith. Keith came from your typical nasty background. You know, the kind that makes a killer. Keith was born on the 6th of April in 1955 to Les and Gladys Jesperson in Chilliwack, British Columbia, Canada. In Chilliwack, British Columbia, Canada. The middle child with 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Now, whilst Keith said his father was a violent alcoholic, his dad Les denied this. However, there are plenty of accounts from other family members to confirm that Les was a shit and was violent and nasty. Keith was a big boy and, of course, was teased mercilessly for this from a young age. He was a very tall, very large person. He was a lonely outcast and was called Igor, or Ig, by his brothers, who were also shits, probably as a result of the same rotten upbringing, and the kids at school were just as bad. He was a shy giant, though not gentle, because from the age of 5 he quite enjoyed killing and beating animals for shits and giggles. He found he really enjoyed the feelings he got when he killed them or if they were killed by other animals. He would catch birds, stray dogs and cats that hung around the, yes, you guessed it, trailer park that he grew up in, and would routinely strangle them to death, which was one of the only things his father praised him for. Unsurprisingly, he often wondered how it would feel to do the same to a human.
Praised him for?
Yes, his father was perhaps not the best dad. Let's put it that way.
That's what we're looking for. That is a red flag,
Absolutely.
that animal action.
Yeah, but also he often wondered how it would feel to do the same to a human, which I would say is
To a human,
even more of a red flag.
Escalation.
So, get ready. When Keith was 10, he tried to kill a kid called Martin. Yeah, because Martin gave him the shits because he would get him into trouble and then blame everything on Keith. A year or so later, a nasty bully held Keith underwater at a local lake until he blacked out. A while later, he returned the favour, nearly drowning the boy, and was only stopped by a lifeguard at the local pool. Keith has also said he was raped at 14. And that's all I've got to say about that because there's no other information. He did manage to finish high school but didn't go to college because his father said he was an idiot and it was a waste of time. And Father of the Year award goes to
Yeah.
Les Jesperson. So whilst he was shy and ill-experienced with the ladies, Keith married Rose Huck in 1975 and they had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. Keith worked as a long-haul trucker to support the family. As time went on, and with Keith being on the road, Rose thought he was having an affair, as strange women would call. Eventually, after 14 years of marriage, Rose packed the kids up and went to live with her family in Spokane, Washington, when Keith was out trucking, and they divorced in 1990. Now, as I said, Keith was a big fellow.
That's the trigger.
Around a similar period of time, as I said, Keith was a big fellow. He was 6 foot 7 inches and weighed around 116 kilometres. And weighed around 116 kilograms. He had a passion for policing. Sounds similar to our last guy. And began working really hard and training to join the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. But unfortunately, he injured himself training, and that put the kibosh on that. Bitterly disappointed by both the end of his marriage, but probably more his failure to have his dream job, Keith went back to long-haul trucking and relocated to Cheney, Washington. It was around this time that Keith was hanging out in the bar where he met Tonya. He was 35 at the time and spotted the pretty, friendly young woman. He made conversation with her and asked if she'd like to have dinner. She said yes, but then he realised he had no money, so he asked if she'd like to go back to his place. Tonya agreed, and they did go back to his. Keith was really angling for sex, of course. They did have sex, but afterward Keith got really nasty, calling her names, and an altercation ensued, which ended with Keith beating Tonya and strangling her to death with a rope. Most people who find themselves in a situation that escalated that quickly... Exactly, and took a turn for the worst, might have panicked. Not Keith. He took a drive. Not Keith. He took a drive and dumped some of Tonya's belongings. She had a Walkman, a purse, and an ID on her at the time. Then he went back to the bar to make sure people had seen him there. He then went home, put her body in his car, and dumped her down the embankment on the side of the highway. And then he went off for coffee at the local truck stop, so again he could alibi himself if he needed to. But he didn't need to because somehow no one had noticed a 6'7" man talking to and leaving with Tonya at the bar, and instead some granny and her abusive boyfriend became suspect number 1 and 2.
Isn't that odd?
Isn't it?
Or is it because they didn't do any further investigation once the granny...
I think it's a bit of both. I think initially there was absolutely no leads. Like, there were no witnesses, no one saw anything, there was nothing to see here. And then the granny, I think fairly quickly, like within weeks, became sort of central to the story. Sorry, Laverne, inserted herself and John in the story. And because they had nothing else to go on, they just sort of latched onto that. And they didn't really believe it to begin with. The thing that really did it, though, was that she knew where the body was. Or she took them down to where the body had been found. And that was the thing that they thought, really implicated her and
meant she was involved at some point.
Allegedly, yes. Well, that's how they read it anyway. So not long after Tonya was killed, a woman named Dawn Slagle was cooling off in her car in a car park in California after a major fight with her husband. The 21-year-old was with her 4-month-old baby boy, sitting in a car park late at night. What could go wrong? She was approached by Keith, and after some quite pleasant chats, she agreed to get in his car with him. She took her son too. Of course, he drove them around and tried to force her to have sex with him, and she refused. After hours of him trying it on, trying to force her to give him oral sex, and trying to choke her or break her neck unsuccessfully, he let her and the baby go. And I can only assume that the crying baby put him off a bit. At any rate, Dawn reported this to the police, and they did pick him up for it. They, for whatever reason, decided that his version of events was that she was injured because the angle of where her head was while she was trying... Well, he was trying to break her neck, but he said, "Oh no, it was an accident because it was a bit awkward in the car, while she was giving me an old jobby, and so it's just an accident." And the police went, "No worries, mate. Fair enough." And
That
whilst
makes
he had
sense.
been charged with sexual assault, I think he got away with a misdemeanor. So, yep, no problem. It was 1990. Sadly, Dawn was his only lucky escape. On the 30th of August 1992, the currently unidentified body of a woman Keith had raped and strangled was found near Blythe, California in the US. Keith gives the Jane Doe's name as Claudia. A month later, in Turlock, California, the body of Cynthia Lynn Rose was discovered. Keith claims Rose was a sex worker who entered his truck at a truck stop while he slept, which pissed him off, and so he killed her. His fourth victim was another sex worker, Lori Ann Pentland of Salem, Oregon, whose body was found in November 1992.
Is that how sex workers get their business? Going into trucks while they sleep? Like, that's just a nonsense story. That didn't happen.
No idea, but yes, it pissed him off. No. So his fourth victim was another sex worker, Lori Ann Pentland of Salem, Oregon, whose body was found in November 92. According to Keith, Pentland attempted to double the fee she charged for the sex he had been engaged in with her. She threatened to call the police, so he strangled her to death. Keith killed his next victim in June 1993 in Santa Nella, California. She was another Jane Doe, but was identified in 2022 as Patricia Skipple, who he claimed was named Carla or Cindy. And the police originally had considered her death a drug overdose. She and another of the victims have been very lately identified, and it's all through DNA, as in, familial DNA matching. So in September 1994, another Jane Doe was found in Crestview, Florida. Keith had previously said her name was Suzanne, and she was identified as Suzanne L. Killenberg on October the 3rd, 2023, so literally 2 or 3 weeks ago, through familial DNA. He claimed that she had started screaming in his truck, and he was in a rest area where he wasn't allowed to have anyone on board, and he thought he'd get in trouble, so he strangled her. That makes sense. In January 1995, Keith agreed to take a young woman, Angela Cerbrise, from Spokane, Washington to Indiana in his truck. Approximately a week into the trip, Cerbrise became impatient and began to nag Keith to hurry up, as she wanted to see her boyfriend. In response, Keith raped and strangled her. He then strapped her to the undercarriage of his truck and dragged her face down to grind off her face and prints.
Oh my God!
Jeepers.
Finally, Keith did something really dumb. He killed an ex-girlfriend, Julie Winningham. He'd been questioned about a week earlier, but had refused to talk to the police. He became increasingly paranoid that he was going to be arrested, and he'd written to her brother confessing to having killed Julie. I think he thought that Julie had met another guy or was being unfaithful to him, so that's why he decided to kill her. Her brother gave the letter to the police, and Keith also tried to die by suicide twice in the lead-up to finally confessing to killing Julie and his other victims when the police came to interview him. And it's widely believed that he tried to die by suicide to try and get leniency from whoever was going to sentence or punish him in the future. Once he was arrested on the 30th of March 1995, it became clear that he had killed Tonya. The police were able to link his DNA from a stamp on the letter, the happy face letter that he sent, to DNA found on Tonya. And he also told them where to find her license, which up until then hadn't been found. He then, for no apparent reason, told them he'd killed up to 160 people. And he also tried to claim some of the victims of the Green River Killer. But he then later recanted this nonsense, although I believe there are multiple other cases that investigators have also looked at in connection to Keith. But at this point in time, he's only confirmed to have killed 8 women only. Keith was found guilty and is serving 3 consecutive life sentences at the Oregon State Penitentiary in Salem. In September 2009, Keith was indicted in Riverside County, California on murder charges. He was extradited in December 2009. He was convicted of another murder and received a fourth life sentence in January 2010. Of course, Keith's confession and actual evidence linking him to the murder of Tonya meant that Laverne and Sosnovsky were exonerated and released from jail. Both Laverne and Sosnovsky have since passed away. On why Laverne implicated herself, her daughter has said she was a loving and giving person and couldn't find another way out of her destructive relationship. I did read someone else say the only crime they were guilty of was stupidity. Keith's mother died in 1986. I said her and Sosnovsky. He was pretty dumb too. Keith's mother died in, I think it was 85 or 86, and his father died in 2015. And I found Les' Father of the Year's obit online. Strangely, no mention of his fathering a serial killer. Keith has got on to stir up endless shit with media and the legal system, some of which appears to have stopped him getting the death sentence, particularly given he's killed across multiple states: California, Oregon, Florida, Nebraska, Washington, and Wyoming. But I'm not going to give him any more airtime. He's a remorseless killer. His daughter has made an internet career of being the daughter of the happy face killer. He says she's a liar, but then with Keith as a dad, who can blame her or indeed determine if that's true? And that is the case of the happy face killer, who was such a massive knob/narcissist that he had to fess up to his own crimes to stop someone else getting the attention.
God.
Golly.
He's awful.
I didn't want to go. Yeah, that was horrendous. But I didn't want to go into a great deal of detail about the murders because for me, what piqued my interest was the stupid false confessions.
Yeah.
Who in their right mind does that?
So
stupid.
Why was he stupid?
Sosnovsky? Well, firstly, I think he could have got a better attorney.
But
he
maybe couldn't
took
afford
no contest to the murder charge too, because come on, there was no evidence whatsoever.
Because he was afraid of the death penalty. Yeah, no, but I don't think that means he's stupid. It means his legal strategy
I do wonder how many sex workers listen to our podcast.
I should have run for the hills. I just will tell you that Laverne worked out, by the way, where the body was dumped, not because she had anything to do with it, but she'd heard from some locals in the community, the rough area. And when she went down, when they took her down there, she could see where people had been walking and had sort of trampled it, which they would have done when they found the body and processed the scene. And so she was like, down here. So she used a modicum of deductive reasoning to throw herself under the bus.
What a mastermind.
Isn't it incredible?
Goodness me.
And do we know what he did to her?
I feel ill again. I just feel...
Who did what to whom?
He did to Laverne.
I think he just beat her. He got drunk and beat her up a lot.
Maybe I was going to say something because it's been bothering me a bit. I feel yet again we're back with these poor transients and sex workers, anyone who's sort of on the fringe.
Disenfranchised ladies, that's right.
It's insane. They're just such obvious victims of these kind of horrendous crimes.
Monsters. Yep.
Time and time and
but
time
Tonya
again.
wasn't a sex worker. Tonya, the first victim was just a girl at a bar, as in, out for a nice night, friendly girl, probably thought he was nice. They think that the combination of the marriage breaking down and not getting into the Royal Canadian Police were the things that triggered his rage, and most of his crimes against these women were just fueled by rage. I think somewhere I read he said something like, killing's no big deal or something like that. It's just an animal. And he writes he's got these long dissertations about things, this that happened and that happened. He's a dickhead. I don't really want to give him anything, apart from maybe the death penalty, because I cannot believe he's escaped it. If there's one thing I've got to say for him, he's worked out how to manipulate the legal system. I think they believe that the way part of the reason that he confessed to Tonya's murder wasn't because he felt sorry for Laverne Pavlinac or John Sosnovsky. It was because by being arrested for that in that state, in Oregon, it would have delayed proceedings or something else to do with the death penalty in other states. So it's quite deliberate. They think it's quite deliberate, the reason that he's confessed to the certain things he has, although he makes himself out to be some, God, yeah, like, aren't I amazing? I saved those 2 people. I got them out of jail. You know, I got them exonerated. He
God,
is,
really?
yeah, a total narcissist. Yeah.
You mentioned about Patricia and how she was originally thought to have died from an overdose. Did she have similar wounds to everyone else? And yeah, right, so that was never looked into.
I would say so. But I think it also depends on when her body was found.
He only got 4 life sentences.
Yes, of the 8. And I'm not quite sure whether or not he's been indicted and actually tried for some of those, or obviously the other 4. And again, that could be to do with the other states. So they'd have to indict him and take him to – he's still, by the way, alive and he's in jail in Oregon. But they'd have to extradite him. And I think there comes a point in time where they sort of go, look, he's doing 4 life sentences. He's never going to get out. Is it worth the cost of prosecution for the other 4? Unless, of course, someone was baying for the death penalty.
It's interesting because, and I'm not sure what happened with Patricia, but for instance, if she was thought to have died from an overdose, then he comes out and says, no, it was me. You would think, and maybe she didn't have people close to her or around.
She wasn't
her
identified
to
for 20-something, 30-something years.
Someone would want closure on that.
Yeah, she was a Jane Doe. So they only identified or worked out who she was last year. And to Carla's point, I think some of these women were either sex workers or they were jumping from one place to the other, and they had cut ties with some of their family. Like, they didn't have people watching out for them regularly.
It's a real
like in the case of Tonya,
that runs through so many of our cases.
Yeah, but like Tonya's parents immediately reported her missing. Yeah. So sentencing, because there's a question as to whether or not Laverne and Sosnowski and their ludicrous confession got in the way of the investigation, and some of those other women
have to have.
May not have been killed if they'd been picked up earlier.
Oh, 100% it did. Yeah.
Taken their, eye off the prize because they thought they had the prize.
I'm comfortable with her being guilty of stupidity. I don't understand the connection with him. And
all right, fine.
Frivolous,
he's a pig.
Idiot. But she is just.
Oh, I know.
So wrong on so many levels doing
Silly
that.
Girl,
and we're talking about her, not the real problem in this story. But yeah, she really is. But
she's part of the problem. She's
what
part
did
of
she
the problem.
said? I know that she's passed. What happened once she was released from prison? Was she on the TV talk show circuit or?
Oh, no, I think she just talked about the fact that she just
what did Oprah
couldn't see any way out of this abusive relationship other than to try to... So earlier you said, who was she protecting? Was she protecting John? No, she was trying to throw John under the bus. She wanted John to be incarcerated to get away from her.
Yeah. And then it all just played out.
It snowballed.
The guilty one.
Yes, as she put it.
I mean, that's enough. That's enough punishment for her, isn't it?
I think she did, 3 or 4 years...
Her going
for
to
nothing.
jail for stupidity
for her own idiocy, yeah. No, I like that. I like that you're just saying she's already done her time because, how dumb can you be?
Yeah, I don't think you get much empathy for that.
Yeah. I feel for him in the context that he went to jail.
I don't. He was a nasty pig.
Yeah, but, he didn't deserve to go to jail for 4 years.
Nobody down no gorge. I don't know. Anyway, maybe not. Anyway, he just went to jail, so there you go. But what do we think about...
Keith or Kevin? What was it?
Keith.
He's an animal.
He is. He really is.
I don't know what to do with people like that.
I'm going to strap him to the undercarriage of a truck.
I think that's all I could think of. Yeah, it's what stands out.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I don't want to say it.
And not drive fast, drive slow.
Well, it's in Trial by Wine World, so that, he can just grow his skin back and then we'll just keep doing it over and over again. I mean, fortunately, she was dead, but, it's... Oh,
maybe we could do that and then we can just tattoo a smiley face on his scar. Facial scar.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
No, tattoo an unhappy face. Put a sad crying face
Yes.
on his face.
And I know you said he had a bad upbringing, but it didn't sound so bad to lead to what
We've seen
he
worse.
did. It sounded like his sadistic ways started pretty early.
I don't think it was all nurture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I don't think it was all nurture.
of
I think there was some nature in
nature.
there. When you consider the killing animals at age 5, yeah, come on, mate.
Yeah, because they say that a lot of your personality is formed in those first few
I'm fine
years,
with
don't
him
they?
under a truck.
Yeah.
And if he's killing
He's terrifying.
animals
He really
at that
is.
age, God.
It was all a means to an end. So if someone's irritating him or causing a problem, his answer was, "I'll just kill her."
Yeah.
And just throw her out like rubbish.
I think that's sort of, I don't know, I've seen some, obviously stuff that we cover here, but some really macabre stuff where I just think women are just so disposable for so many
of these
bad people. Yeah. It's like, whatever. And it's not to say that crimes do not happen against them. Obviously they do. But so many of them are just like, not one woman, it's women. And they're just, and the way they treat them, like, putting her under, really, it's so graphic. It's very difficult to sort of sit here and digest. Here's a man who had his own daughter as well.
He had 2 daughters. That's what gets me. Yep. He had 2 daughters. It made me laugh, though, because I didn't read a lot of what the daughter was complaining about, but she's got a TikTok channel and she reads the letters apparently that he sends her from jail on her TikTok channel. And in when something she was saying, he sent me this letter and he told me that I was fat and that my marriage wouldn't last. And I thought, yeah, look, I know he's a psychopath and all, but I'm not sure that's the worst thing he's ever done.
Yeah. I think, giving that man any airtime to discuss that is
why
a crime
would you?
In itself,
exactly,
right?
yeah.
Silly girl. That's just her trying to
be famous off that. Yeah,
capitalise it. Yeah,
yeah. I
that's
have
cool.
no doubt that there's a great deal of trauma associated with being his daughter. But then I think about the daughters of Joseph D'Angelo Jr., who's the Golden State Killer. I haven't seen them do that. So, have you got anything more for us other than under a truck?
Anything more than under a truck? Oh, I think that's good, and it's hard to find that. I guess the only other thing, so taking him aside, because I think that's a good punishment for him, when you're investigating a murder and the best you've got is some crazy lady trying to do her husband in, it's not very conclusive. And I just wonder whether, as investigators and detectives, just because that's the most information you've got, should you actually proceed with your conviction? And even if you do, how do they get found guilty based on her recanted testimony and all she knows is where the body is?
And even that, she wasn't...
Interesting.
She didn't know where other things were. She knew where the body was, but she couldn't tell them where the Walkman was found or anything. So, I mean, you're right. They should never have been found guilty. There was not enough evidence to convict. It shouldn't have even gone to trial. I mean, I don't understand what the prosecution service was putting it forward.
So I think there's probably a little bit of punishment for the legal system in general for getting that so wrong. Probably not anything too extravagant, but there's a little bit of be better, look at what's going on here, because it does seem like it's a fairly serious crime and a serious conviction. They both get life based on very, very little other than some vengeful and beaten up woman.
Some suggest that she didn't think that she actually would be arrested or go to jail, that it was sort of like you tell us a bit about John and we'll get you out of this, don't worry kind of thing. And so she was kind of surprised when...
Yeah.
She's quite surprised when she was arrested, and I think that's partly why immediately she's like, no, I didn't do anything. So, but it's very difficult because once you change your tune, as we've seen in other cases, if there's evidence that you've lied and turned it round, people just think you lie about everything. They innately distrust you.
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right. There wasn't any evidence, but I think through that behaviour, if that came out in court, people would be like, well, who knows? They might have done it. There's one thing that makes us think they did. So let that be a lesson to you.
There's a bit of a parallel with last week's episode too, though, whereby if authority are telling you something, you believe it. And from a jury's point of view, if there's a prosecutor saying she did it, and here's all of the things that lead us to believe that, they kind of go, oh, I guess she did then, because they're not thinking critically or not looking at the evidence. They're just listening to the prosecutor. So possibly from the prosecutor's point of view, I mean, I've seen, Swanee, you have too, Law and Order, whereby sometimes the prosecutor will go, there's not enough evidence, go and get more. Why didn't that happen?
Yeah.
You know, that's how it works in the real world, obviously. It's on Law and Order.
Wrong one.
You need
Sorry,
your other
wrong
one.
Yeah, there you go. So, you know, this is a clear case of reality not living up to fiction. I would have liked the prosecutor to have said to the police, go and find some real evidence.
Go and find the actual murderer before he goes and kills 7 other women. Yeah.
Correct. Because she's been an idiot and she's put the 2 of them in jail. He's not done... There's nothing to connect him to the crime, and yet he's gone to jail for life. I mean, that could happen to anyone. If all you've got to do is say, yeah, he did it. Oh, I was kind of involved. Oh, fuck, I'm an idiot. Oh, horrible. Yeah,
it's really scary. Yeah. I thought it was quite frightening that someone can just accuse you. And it probably made it even better that she indicted herself as well, that she sort of threw herself under the bus.
100%.
You know, became more believable because she's also saying, oh, no, I did it too. Like, why would you confess to that if it wasn't true?
Yeah, exactly right. Yes.
Terrifying. Yep.
Yeah, so I think the prosecution need a good hard look at themselves.
Okay. And Swanee, are you just happy with under the bus for the bloke? Under the bus. Under the truck.
That just stopped me in my tracks when you said that. I was like, oh my God, and I could see Clarkie just doing the same face. Going, what? Yeah, no, that was too much. So macabre. That's very cruel.
Sick. All right. Well, I might then on that note let you guys
wind us up
off and do your fun things in Santiago, and Swanee and I can go off to bed and do stuff here on this side of the planet, and we can all very quickly forget about the monster that was Keith Jesperson. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me on that one. And as we say every week, miss you already.
Ciao.
Ciao, my lovelies.
Ta-ta.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.